So hello and welcome to the Yorkshire Sound Women Network's Level Up in Audio seminar series. I'm Jess and I'm really pleased to be back again hosting the third event with our guest Mariam Rezaei. So this event, there she is. This event features musical artists and audio professionals presenting their inspirational projects, ideas, experiences. Just a few things to note before we start. Please refrain from taking any screenshots or recordings. We are currently recording the session, so it will be available at a later date. We're going to send it out to you so you can watch it again. If you wish to remain anonymous in the call, please feel free to turn your camera off. That's absolutely fine. And if I could just remind everyone to stay on mute throughout the call. There will be a chance for questions. If you have any questions throughout, I advise that you pop them in the chat section below, and I'll be reading the chat and we'll have a chance to revisit all the questions at the end. So if you think you're going to forget a question, write it down or put it in the chat. I'm just saying this because I always forget the questions that I want to ask. And at the end, we're going to have a section for questions. So we'll have a section for discussion then. So the structure of then we're going to have a more open section for questions. So just a bit about Mariam. She is a composer, turntablist, performer, and writer. She is artistic director for TOPH, a producing mixed art space in Newcastle, which holds regular concerts. And she also curates the Tusk Fringe Festival. And Mariam has released 2 albums, Blood and Skeen, the latter of which was composed entirely during the first lockdown, I believe. Alongside composing and performing, Mariam has a doctoral degree in philosophy of composition, turntable and ensemble at Durham University, and she also. So we've all had our own experiences in lockdown, and for many artists and creative people, it's been a pretty turbulent mix, I'd say, of challenging, desperate frustration, and sometimes, of light and inspiration and moments of creativity. And for Mariam, it's been a pretty busy time. She's nurtured this moving DIY performance spaces online, and in particular last year she's written organised a gig on platform Twitch and run the tasking about your experiences, Mariam, and how you've managed to stay creative during lockdown and inspired during this time. So I'm going to hand over to you.
Thanks very much, Jess, and thank you, Yorkshire Sound Women Network, for inviting me to come along. It means a great deal to me. Yes, my name is Mariam Rezaei, and just a quick visual description. I have shoulder-length dark hair, big lipstick and massive eyeliner. I'm sitting in my studio at home right now. There's a lot of records, a couple of guitars, a couple of turntables behind me. And yeah, I'm from Newcastle. I am from mixed heritage. So I have an Iranian background and also a Geordie background. I'm fiercely proud of both. And you can't deny the Geordie in me. It's in every single part of my voice. So so thank you everyone for coming along and listening to me for what will probably be a very long time, talking a lot. And I'm well known for talking. So I want to tell you a little bit about who I am and what I do, and also more about how I've worked through lockdown and some personal truths about things as well, and how I've been feeling. So just to sort of contextualize a little bit more about what I do and what I have done. I have composed a great deal of music in my time, and at the wonderfully tender age of 36, so I've been around for a little while on the planet now. And I use turntables as my main instrument, although I am actually classically trained in music. My first instrument is the piano, and I got a hold of my first banged up old Joanna when I was 5 years old, and my mum and dad worked really hard and got us those piano lessons, and I played that for nearly 10 years, and I got my grades and was very obsessed with that and loved that. And when I got to the wonderful age of 15, this really interesting age when you're at school and things are becoming cool and not so cool, and classical piano didn't feel as cool as it could have done at that point, and I'm very interested in turntables, hanging out with a lot of different DJs, because there just seemed to be a lot of younger DJs when I was at school, and I started DJing bits of house music. I'd had these classical piano lessons for 10 years, and my mum and dad weren't prepared to buy us turntables. You know, I've come from a humble background, and so, you know, cash was short at home at times. So just like everyone else, I went out and got a job and took care of myself, and spent the best part of 9 months selling Walkmans and PlayStation 2s at Dixon's in Newcastle, until I saved up enough to get my first proper set of turntables. And I still haven't used those Technics turntables. So it was a very interesting time for me, because I'd come from this classical background in music. I've started getting interested in the hip hop DJing. Turning 18, I want to go to university, and my parents weren't very happy that I wanted to leave classical music and get into what basically they thought was crap. They just thought, why would you give up 10 years of playing all of this incredible classical music? But I knew that I wanted to write music, and I knew that I was really interested in DJing. Again, I wanted to go to university, and I wanted to break free in Newcastle. I think a lot of people feel that when they're younger. I went to Leeds Uni, and I absolutely loved it. I had a great time being in Yorkshire and in Leeds. And I worked very hard, and I paid my way through uni. And I came up against a couple of different things at university where not everyone was keen on the turntables. So that's a little bit about sort of getting to this point where I've started just developing an interest in, well, what else can a turntable do? Not just playing other people's records. So I'd kind of seen these different DJ competitions on TV, and I'd seen some DJs that had been having a laugh and having a bit of a joke, and they were doing what we call trick mixing. So they would do some silly stunts for the crowd. So there's a German DJ called DJ David, and he was competing in a large DJ competition called the Disco Mixing Championships. And his party piece, which it really was to do a headstand on a turntable as it was moving. Now, it's funny and it's great and it's entertaining, but I don't know if that makes him the best DJ in the world. But it was the first thing that I was seeing, and I saw these kind of things and I thought, well, look, this guy's doing this cool stuff for the records and I want to have a go with that. And so I started having a little go and playing with the turntables. So I don't know how many people have played or used turntables ever before, because actually we have a whole generation who may not even know what turntables really are, because they are quite gimmicky for some people, but then I know it's mad fashionable for like indie kids, from what I've heard, and buying records from Urban Outfitters at 35 quid a pop. That's what I've heard, that's all I'm saying. So just behind me I have a couple of turntables which are black and they have red records on them. And so we have these big flat vinyl plastic discs that have sound written into them. When you are scratching a sound, you get a hold of a sound on a record with your hand on the record. The most simple scratch is the baby scratch. At the very beginning of a sound, you push the sound forward and then you pull the sound back to the beginning of the sound. So you get a wah-ah kind of sound. And that's the most simple scratch there is. It's called a baby scratch. It was the first scratch that was invented. It was invented by Grand Wizard Theodore. Is the foundation of all other scratches and techniques on the turntable in experimental turntablism. So before I go into a massive legacy of the turntable's history, I would much rather just show you some stuff on the turntables. So I'm going to do some kind of hopeful wizardry and switch from one camera to another in a second, and hopefully you'll hear some crazy sounds coming through. Thanks. Perception limits your worth.
So they join you for
So yeah, so like I like to play around with turntables and do stuff like that. So the audio that I was using there was myself reciting a poem. I'm very keen on poetry by Rumi, who's an ancient Persian poet, Sufi poet. So it's just a sample of myself talking. So within the turntable programming and software that I'm using, I'm simply looping sounds and adding some very basic effects at the same time as changing pitch and the speed of the turntable. So I'm going to share my screen with you and take you through a couple of slides that'll show you some of the work that I've done, and to explain a little bit about some of the community projects that I'm involved with. So I'm just going to share this screen. So yes, I've been working as a freelance artist for about 15 years. And I used to be full-time freelance for about 8 years, and then I chose to take a position part-time at Newcastle University. I do write music and compose for all different kinds of ensembles and mediums, but I definitely specialise in the turntables. I used to write a lot of music for theatre and dance and film. At the moment, I'm much more interested in instrumental and music for just turntables. I have been a DJ for an embarrassingly long amount of time, and I intend full well to be an old granny DJ in all of her glory with the most incredible collection of turntables and records. So absolutely brace yourselves, because that's definitely happening. I've done a lot of community work over the years in loads of different guises as a musician as well. So at one point I had 9 community choirs, because I am pretty gobby and I'm very good at working with people and just sort of, well, actually I'm very good at telling people what to do. So that works really well in community choirs, because they really need someone in charge to kind of go, oi, and no, it needs to be a bit better than that, etc. Anyhow, another community group that I work with at the moment, and still do, and we are working through lockdown, is a group called the Crocodile Crew, and they are part of the Lawnmowers Theatre Company. And the Lawnmowers Theatre Company works with adults with disabilities. And I've been working with the Crocodile DJ crew for about 6 years now. And it's the best. I absolutely love this DJ crew. They are absolutely fantastic. We have some DJs who've been with us for the whole time I've been with them. I've got some younger DJs. We've got a huge age range. We've got guys and girls. And we run a variety of different clubs and online projects, including an online radio show. So DJing is really something I love, and I just love to be part of. In 2012, I was fortunate to get some funding as part of the Cultural Olympiad, if anyone can remember the Olympics. And I developed a project called Noisestra, which was to work with young people to develop a turntable ensemble and orchestra. And so that project was working in a studio space, and that studio space is the old police house. So that space literally was an old police house, and it's in Gateshead. It's 2 streets away from the Sage Gateshead. I don't know if anybody knows that. Just over the Tyne Bridge. I have a picture on the screen now of Noisestra. We work with an ensemble called Apartment House. On the screen you can see about 15 people, including the Apartment House, all lined up in one long, very long table with a lot of turntables on it. We were at the Sage Gateshead, and they're rehearsing with their turntables. I've performed with lots of different musicians over the years in different guises. There's a picture of myself performing with an opera singer and noise musician called Attila Chihar from the band Mayhem and Sun. That was a hell of a gig, I'll not lie. That was incredible improv. He's an incredible artist, so there was a lot of pressure on that. I've done all sorts of different gigs and workshops, places like Huddersfield Contemporary Music Festival, which I'm showing a picture of myself, and now I'm showing a couple of pictures of the old police house, which is a picture of a 6-room building with a nice black door at the front, and it's red bricks. There's some steps at the front and a couple of dustbins because they would never move out the way of the front door. Now, I was annoyed as. We The old police house have been an amorphous being. We've moved, we've shifted, we've changed, we've done all sorts of different things, and I absolutely love it. We're going to talk about that now, and moving and how we worked in lockdown. It's been very exciting. So the old police house is very much artist-led. It started with me. Noise Distro were part of that, and we still have DJs from the Noise Distro project that come and work and hang with us. On the screen, I'm showing a variety of pictures that show a lot of different audiences. I'm in a number of them, and then I've taken a number of them. We have musicians such as Lee Patterson. There's Faye McCalman on saxophone with William Mondes. There's a picture of me. There's a picture of Fritz Welsh and Eric Borosh. We have a Geordie band called Blom at the top. There's the stage at Sage Gateshead, and lots of random people and audiences. So we've had a lot of fun. So the old police house has become a producing organisation and a little community venue of some sort. It's very much makeshift. We're now based in Newcastle, as we had to move from the original premises, but we still work and we still facilitate gigs and performances and hopefully support artists along the way. As I was saying before, the old police house came out of the Noise Distro project. It was to support young artists, and as I've grown older, which I have over the years, I've hoped that I've been able to mentor and support other young artists from all different backgrounds to come through the old police house. What we think is very important is that there is an ecology and that there is a safe space for people to come and experiment and for people to come and relax and to enjoy making what might be very weird, very bizarre music to an audience of however many decide to turn up without having to worry about paying for the rehearsal space or paying for any hire of any kit or anything. Newcastle is a small place. Gateshead is a small place. They're so small in comparison to other cities that they get jammed together. They've been branded as Newcastle Gateshead, and there's an identity. There's this new identity that's been sort of dreamt up as a marketing idea and scheme. It's important to acknowledge that because the communities in Newcastle are small. They're disparate, but they are very passionate, and we all share and come together. Those scenes are from LGBTQIA+, to the noise heads, to jazz, to rock, to folk, to crazy experimental, to some pop DJs, so all different abilities, ages, backgrounds, whatever identity. We're a very open and very inclusive space. We've had a lot of different gigs over the years. All have been predominantly voluntary. Everything that do, it's all voluntary. It's just to make something happen and to provide that space. As I was saying before, Newcastle and Gateshead, they are both small places, so it can be very difficult for a venue to afford to open up and to stay open for, say, 10 people to turn up on a Tuesday night. But we find that there are artists that are passing through the space, maybe from Scotland down south, further down south. They need somewhere to stay, they can come hang out, etc. We've had funding in the past. We've had people who've had their own funding and that have come and visited. Anyway, some of those people that, examples of that are people like Ilan Volkov, who's a performer, improviser, and very famous conductor. Michael Dutch, Yeah You, who I already mentioned. I don't know if anybody knows Yeah You, but if you don't, you really should listen to them. They're amazing, this band. Chris Watson, Rodri Davis, who lived in Newcastle for a long time, Richard Dawson, who is from Newcastle, etc. The old police house have run a festival programme for Tusk Festival now for 6 years. And as we went into lockdown in 2020, we had to all get together as Tusk Festival and Police House and talk about what are we going to do, because Tusk Festival, it runs mid-October, and we were talking, and I don't know if anyone has any experience of planning or arranging, facilitating and producing a festival, certainly anything that has clout and a lot of Arts Council funding to it, you do need to organise these things in advance. So as soon as we were talking about this international lockdown back at the beginning of March, we all had to get together and start talking about what are we going to do and how do we go forward. There was a huge question mark because obviously everyone was incredibly uncertain what is going to happen. The other thing that happened at exactly that time was the Old Police House were planning on a number of small gigs that were coming up in our own space. And we're a little bit nuts at the Old Police House and decide we're going to do something. It doesn't really matter. You know, we embrace if there is a, how do I put it, a misgiving. Things don't have to be perfect all the time, and we get that. I mean, you know, we're a group of people who pride on modifying and, you know, bits of kit that might be a bit broken, but have that beautiful sound that's just right, you can't get anywhere else. So we decided, we're going to be stuck at home. Well, let's just do it online. We do these kind of things anyway, so why don't we just work that out? So the Old Police House is made up of myself and two other people I work with, Adam Denton and Mark Wardlaw. The three of us were having a chat, and Mark was like, "Oh, you're not heard of this Twitch?" So I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I just sort of wake up, DJ, go to work, DJ, go to bed. I don't really. Oh no, it's for gamers. You got to work it hard. It's like your own TV station, but it's for gamers. I was like, all right. So I'm sure they'd be all right with some music. It's just, you know, a gig. So anyway, Mark learns how to use Twitch and also OBS, the Open Broadcasting Software, and teaches me, which was incredible because I'm not very good, but he's a tolerant, patient person. And very quickly, we shifted everything online, and we made a lot of mistakes on the way. But so there is a picture on the screen right now of Erica Lehman, and Erica has this fantastic long golden blonde and pink and peach blonde hair. They are playing two guitars. There's a big pink flag in the background, and there's also a hamster in the top right hand corner because there's a picture-in-picture view, and this is a Skype screen that's being shared on Twitch, and it looks a bit nuts. We have had 13 gigs that we called the Housebound series for the TOPH TV series. It started the first week of lockdown. We ran from our homes on home computers, which were very much on the blink. And we advertise only on Facebook. We don't have any money. So we just had to share around our friends and ask them, can you tell someone else and invite them? Because we have to make this happen, but without anything. We're cheeky, we've got a sense of humour, and you can see on the screen right now, we have a lot of different pictures that are the adverts and the pictures for advertising the Facebook events for our Housebound gigs. We just have a very silly sense of humour. We've had incredible artists come and perform as part of the series, and we're very fortunate. We agreed with every artist in advance. If they were to perform, we would not have a fee. We were offering a digital hat, and we wanted to donate any money that was made, that any audience could donate to our local food bank. We have a very sad reality in the north of England, and before lockdown, the Old Police House was and still is supporting a local food bank. So we really felt like it was important because we didn't think we'd be making much money. Anything that came in, those coppers would go down to the local food bank. On the screen right now is a picture of the Glasgow Improvisers Orchestra, and there are all sorts of instruments from cellos, saxophones, keyboards, drums, violins, clarinets, and the wonderful Maggie Nichols singing. We were very fortunate that a number of very high profile, alongside fantastic experimental, local, national and international artists from all over agreed to come and perform for us. The Glasgow Improvisers Orchestra were really, really brilliant, and I don't know if anybody knows them or if anyone's followed up on their festival, which has been online, but they've really experimented throughout lockdown on how to perform compose and improvise using Zoom in large groups. I highly recommend online on YouTube and on Glasgow Improvisers Orchestra for GeoFest. That's what it's called. They had a couple of days of really fantastic stuff, which I know online as an archive. I'm showing a picture at the moment of an article that I wrote. I was asked by YSWN magazine to contribute about how the old police house suddenly changed and moved all of their work online. I was given 2 days to write this article because as you all may remember, when we went into lockdown in March, everything was very fast. And they were going to press and to print, and they asked. There is a picture on the screen of my former dining table, which has has 2 turntables, a DJ mixer and a laptop on it, and a DJ controller underneath it. And that is basically how I lived for 9 months in that flat. I just kept adding to that table with kit. I've just moved recently. So now I'm showing a screen with lots of different pictures of different artists. We have Kath and Phil Tyler. There is a cat who is our famous noise cat, Murdo, cat of Ali Robertson from the band Usurper, which I'm aware some of you will know. That's Murdo, and he's an amazing cat. He was celebrating Sun Ra's birthday that day. We have had fantastic artists. We have Yol, we've had Rest and Helena Sell. There are loads of other pictures. We've got Greta, Woody G. Gast, who I know is here, Gretchen from Gutter Snipe, who played as Petron Safine, who I love, and Hara Davis, all sorts of different artists, Lucas Abella. So on the screen, there are a number of different artists in different poses with instruments. We have Sophie Cooper, who is there, and I believe you'll all know her, and she was absolutely fantastic. I must say actually that Sophie Cooper's performance for us, which was Dial-A-Bone, and she adapted it to online. She performed that and it was streamed live through Twitch. And when Sophie performed, she was having a conversation with the chat room and she was waiting for responses from the chat room to perform. And it was absolutely phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. It was the essence of, then had this fantastic energy of like what is good creative practice on online and for online distribution now. And Sophie is, incredibly sharp, as you will know, just absolutely nailed that and really went and took all the risk, and something fantastic happened as a result. Anyway, there are just more pictures of me playing. The Old Police House were fortunate. We got a really lovely review in YSWN magazine, which was very nice because for 13 weeks on a Friday night, we did a lot of TV stuff. So in lockdown, I did compose a new album, and basically I got really bored. I just sort of woke up and was just really bored, and I was like, I need to do something. And actually, this is the most difficult part of this conversation I have, is to talk about actually, like, very honestly, as an artist, what happened. I knew we were going to be going into some form of lockdown, even though I didn't know that was what the word was, at around mid-February. I had one day where I received 2 emails that basically cut off about 2/3 of my work for that year, because they were all international commissions, working with international ensembles. And that was huge. I just didn't understand why all of a sudden everything just stopped, and why I had been writing 2 very large pieces, and that was going to make a significant amount of my income in 2020, just completely stopped. And the reason being that it was not going to be possible to have rehearsals. Of course, the idea of a lockdown wasn't even being floated in England, and some of these musicians were from, Australia, America, there's Canada, Germany, and so that I knew something very big was about to happen. So that became very apparent to me. It came as sweet relief that I was able to make something creative in lockdown. And in terms of the finances of things have certainly changed. I didn't make anything in lockdown to make money. I wasn't doing it for the purposes of making money. I do I am fortunate that I have been a commissioned artist for a number of different years. So, for example, something like Huddersfield Festival have commissioned me. I haven't applied. I've been very fortunate in that respect. But what I wanted to do was find something to occupy myself, because I was working, but I was completely in isolation by myself. I was living by myself. My partner at the time, he was living in Scotland. And so we were apart for nearly 4 months. So yes, Skeen. A little bit about Skeen. As I was performing before on the turntables, Skeen was written for 2 turntables and is written to be performed live. I wrote it very quickly. That's not to say I'm some sort of incredible genius. That's to say I've practiced a lot and I know my way around things. And so when I had some new sounds, I felt very confident to choose, this is what I would like to do. At first, when I was in lockdown, I thought, well, this isn't enough. This isn't good enough. I've only got this. And I had shown a picture a couple of slides earlier of my dining table with my turntables on. And the previous pieces that I had written for turntables beforehand had been for 4 turntables. And all of a sudden I was like, no, but I want 4, I want more. But I actually don't have all of that kit at home. My other kit was in a different studio that I rent out, a studio space. And I couldn't get to it because that was lockdown. And so I was thinking about it, and I was frustrated, and there just seemed to be a moment for me where I felt like, instead of seeing this as a disadvantage, I only have 2 decks, I'm going to come and approach this as, how much can I get out of these 2 decks? And so I saw it as an artistic challenge, a creative challenge. And it sounds very simple, but in my head it wasn't. It really wasn't at the time. I was like, but I want 4. I've been thinking about 4, and I've been working, and I've been really studying quartets for a really long time. And I've been writing string quartets and turntable quartets. And I thought, nah, actually, and the other thing that I really wanted to make sure I could do and achieve was to perform it live in 1 take. So every track on that album is 1 take. There is no editing. There's nothing at all. The sounds that I was using are not edited. They're not in any way manipulated. All the manipulation is live with the turntables in 1 go. I'm showing a picture on the screen now of the cassette of the album Skeen, and the front cover has these multicolored kind of triangle shapes, and actually it's a mirror image of my fingernails. And it's a yellow cassette. I was very fortunate that Skeen was really well received. I got some very good reviews and recommendations from Bandcamp, from The Quietist, from Wire Magazine, and BBC Radio 3 picked up on it, and I went on to Radio 3 Late Junction, and I went on to Freeness with Corey Mwamba. I don't know if anyone listens to that. That's really fantastic. And spoke to them about the composition and how I was working in lockdown with TOPH TV and with Skeen. I'm just showing a couple of pictures of Freeness, what the app looked like on my phone. Alongside all of that work with TOPH TV and with my own composition, I was also still delivering my freelance workshops with the Lawnmowers Theatre Company. So on the screen right now is one of the DJs at Lawnmowers with some DJ equipment, a tractor controller and a couple of laptops. And we worked out how to use Zoom. I'm showing a picture now of 6 people in a Zoom room. And we were learning how can we DJ? How can we keep working together? How can we have practical workshops? And then we decided, actually, how can we celebrate being together? Because we got to a very bored time again online. Now, I don't know if anyone else here is a DJ. Oh, I hope that hasn't just stopped. Yeah. I don't know if anyone else here is a DJ, but there's definitely a sort of festival season when it comes to the summer. And as DJs, we get kind of itchy because we really, really want to party then. So as we were approaching the summer, I spoke with the DJs and my friends, DJs and colleagues at Lawnmowers, and we decided we were going to really give it a go and volunteer. Using the experience that I had from the old Police House TV, we decided we were going to run an online festival. That festival was called Connect LD Plus 2020. And it was an online festival for LD Plus people, artists with learning disabilities and their wider community. So it was an integrated festival, but it was run by the Lawnmowers artists. We had a really great time. It was a lot of hard work. And we streamed everything on YouTube alongside some workshops with different artists. And we finished with a Zoom club. So with everything else that was going on, it's important to acknowledge that actually things haven't been very easy for us as freelance artists, and to start, I think it's important for us to start talking and being more open about what's happened. When we first came out of the first lockdown, there was a lot of optimism. People started booking shows and work, and there were extra funds and schemes that came up to help people and artists get back to work and get projects going. But there was a lot of damage from a number of months, people who had lost a lot of work as freelancers. Not everybody was able to be furloughed or to get support on the self-employed support network that was support funds, sorry. And that has been very difficult. I'm one of those people who's part-time employed and part freelance, so I'm fortunate that I have been able to work. But I do also, and I am still feeling and know the impact of having lost a lot of work. I'm really glad that there was emergency artist funding from Arts Council, but I do think there's a question mark over whether it was enough and if it was quite right, the way in which it was all dealt out. I made a conscious decision not to apply for it because I know I have work elsewhere and it's not for someone like me, in my opinion. I do think that it's a time for us to be mindful of other people. We are still waiting for the government to support freelancers getting back into the arts. I'm showing a picture now of Adam Denton, who is a musician at your Police House. He's a slim, white, Caucasian man with ginger hair and glasses, and he's holding, I think it's a dictaphone, in the air with a cable next to a little amp. Your Police House, as soon as we got out of our first lockdown, we started considering how can we perform or make something happen that's safe. And we decided to make, we wanted to make a full series of performances, but we were only actually able to make 2. We called it the Old Police House Outbound. And so we played outside. There were only a small number of artists involved. There wasn't any audience. And the entire thing was streamed from my iPhone through Twitch. We had a lot of fun. And it was a great relief to be able to make some sound. Here's a picture of some of us standing outside. As you can see, we're all distanced. We had a second gig up in Glasgow in a forest, which was incredibly good fun. And that's a picture of Caroline Mackenzie. Caroline Mackenzie has long dark hair and she's wearing a black t-shirt and blue jeans, playing a child's red guitar. And it was incredible. There's a tiny little purple mini rig speaker, and it made a hell of a racket actually, which was good to know. There's a picture of Fritz Welsh, Adam Campbell and Liena, who are playing socially distanced out in the woods too in Glasgow. So we went back into a second lockdown, and we had to then shift our focus to Tusk Festival and to Tusk Fringe. I've been talking for a long time, and I'm just wondering if anybody has any questions about anything, rather than me just keep talking. Okay, well, I'll just keep talking a little bit more, if that's all right. Yeah, okay, great, sorry. I was talking how when we first went into lockdown in March, we had to start talking and considering how we were going to program Tusk Festival and Tusk Fringe Festival. And it became very apparent in the middle of the summer that it had to be online. It was the only fail-safe that we could have. I'm showing us a picture right now, which is a black and white print. There's a picture of a building, which is Morden Tower in Newcastle, and there's a skull above it. It's an image that's made by the artist Yol. He was artist in residence for us and is a good friend. I love this picture. I'm showing a picture of the Tusk Festival poster for 2020 online. Lee Etherington is the director of Tusk Festival, and he had to go back to Arts Council and speak with them about how he could adapt the festival to online. We had the experience of programming TOPH TV. We had the experience of Tusk Festival, having previously live streamed a great deal. In a nutshell, Tusk Festival is a 4-day-long festival that happens in Newcastle, and it involves international artists and is predominantly experimental music, leaning on rock, noise, doom, weird. And it normally runs for 4 days. After a lot of conversation, we decided to run a 14-day long TV station, which was every night and all day on the weekends. Tusk Fringe Festival, instead of running for 3 nights, was now going to run over 4 nights. There was a wide variety of artists that were involved, and in terms of the finances of things, it changed quite drastically because of practical reasons. We weren't able to sell tickets, but we were able to save money on not spending on hotels and on flights. So there were things that balanced in budgets. The festival was really, really well received. The normal sort of figures of audience attendance is around 1,000 in person, and we were in the tens of thousands from live streaming of unique viewers that were coming along. It became a really fantastic event where you just knew that you could tune in on night. You wouldn't know everything that was going to happen. You'd learn something new. You'd not like everything, but it felt to us like there was a balanced program, and it was all for free. So I'd like to just show you a little example of some of the videos and some of the artists that performed. So as part of Tusk Fringe, we asked a band called Gauche, who are based in Philadelphia, if they would perform. And they are they're a small act. They're not very massively well known, but they're a lot of fun, as you're about to see. Again, everything for Tusk Fringe has been done on a wing and a prayer. There's a very small amount of funding available to make things happen. So I'd just like to show you a little video of that, so you can get a sense and a taste of how these things were run and what they looked and sounded like. This is Adam Denton presenting.
Well, thank you, DJ, Request Denied, and Evola. I'm delighted to tell you that now, all the way from Philadelphia, it's Gauche.
We will forsake our countries. We will leave our motherlands behind us and become one with this earth. We have no nation, no philosophy, no ideology. We go where we're needed, fighting not for country, not for government, but for ourselves. We need no reason to fight. We fight because we are needed. We will be the deterrent for those with no other recourse. We are soldiers without borders, our purpose defined by the era we live in. We will sometimes have to sell ourselves and services. If the times demand it, we'll be revolutionaries, criminals, terrorists, and yes, we may all be headed straight to hell. But what better place for us than this? It is our only home, our heaven and our hell. This
sorry, I couldn't find the stop button there. So yeah, so Tusk Fringe has definitely got late night vibes and definitely rave vibes, and we were really lucky that Ghost were up for it. And that video was made specifically for us for the festival. And I don't know if anyone else has been watching performances and festivals and stuff online, but there's been some really amazing stuff coming out from artists where they've really stepped up to the challenge of how do I make or evoke an atmosphere and how can I still be myself, and that comes across on this flat screen, you know. I feel like this is a really strong example of artists finding some imaginative way to communicate the colourful work that they make, and the energy for me is very instant with them. After we were working with Tusk Fringe and with Tusk Festival, there's been a little bit of a break and there's been a little bit of a dip of things that have been happening. And the reason for that has been, in real honesty, a little bit of self-care, a little bit of self-love, and to slow down and to talk a little bit about the fact that the world has changed. I personally, as soon as we went into lockdown, got busy, and that is how I cope. I don't cope by stopping. I do the opposite. And I live for gigs and adrenaline. I'm totally into that. I'm very clean, but absolutely up for gigs. And I could very happily gig all weekend, and I've had years and years of that. So to be cut from that felt too harsh. I needed something in between. But what I did find was that my normal work life was also then starting to collide with the need and the want to continue my art. The Zoom, oh my God, Zoom brain. I mean, I think people must understand what that is, but I was having days that were like 9 hours, meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and then a 2 or 3 hour gig. And it is great when you get to sit back, but there's something that goes on, the Zoom fog and the Zoom brain. And so after we had this, you know, really amazing Tusk Festival, I just had to sort of stop for a little bit. And what I did was come away from the screen, and I started to focus a little bit more on my own work on turntables and started talking about planning. Again, we've gone back into lockdown and things have shifted again with funding. We do need to talk about these things, and I am talking in a lot of different conversations like this and different platforms, and I'm invited in to talk representing other freelance artists in the Northeast, and talk about how difficult things have been, and as an advocate, and to say we need support from others and from our peers. Now, I've been talking to you about the different groups that I work with, and I hope you can understand and see that for me, community is very important. It's something that's just naturally within me. It's something I want to be part of and to help facilitate. And I want to continue being part of that. But where we are right now, it's a question mark. And I suppose as an artist, to the rest of you as artists and as creative practitioners, I don't know what the answer is, but I suspect I know one way forward that I feel will be uplifting and that will be helpful for all of us. I do feel like we have a lot more to lose if we're not honest than we have to lose if we are. So I feel we need to start talking more openly about what has happened and about what we think will happen for the future. I think that we need to support each other as a community. And one of the wonderful things about being here tonight is seeing that there is a digital community in Yorkshire and that exists and that works because you're here now. You know, that means it exists and it's working in lockdown, and we need to preserve that and we need to further that. I think that's very important. We need to consider that our artistic siblings are not just those in our local area. There are also siblings and family that are national, and they are also international. I co-authored an article for The Quietus a couple of weeks ago, and I wrote it with my partner, Stuart Smith, and with Fielding Hope, who is the programmer at Cafe Otto, and also Counterflows Festival. And in this article, we were writing about the issues that there are with the Brexit deal that has occurred, or rather the lack of, and the fact that there are proposals for visas for touring for artists. There's been, I'm sure many people have seen, perhaps even signed, there have been petitions going around. One of those petitions, the most famous one that's been going around, it has been plugged by Radio 6. It is only an endeavour to protect the UK citizens going out into the EU. It is not about returning the favour. So to me, it's very important that for our economy, as promoters and as a musician, if I wanted to go and visit somebody else's home, I want to make sure that my front door is open to them to come and visit my home. That's how I believe our community works in the DIY, and it should continue to work. So I think we need to be more open and to talk about those things, and perhaps be more conscious and aware of how we can be radically kind to each other. I'm not going to be able to thank everyone that's done something to help me, and not everyone will be able to thank me if I've done something to help them, but I think it's still important that we do it. That is part of what it takes to build and be part of a community. Since I volunteered and helped out lawnmowers with the LD Festival that they run last year, they've now gotten some funding to do that. We've now been able to help create future work and funding and support for a number of different artists there. And then as part of this initiative of this festival, we are also branching out to others elsewhere around the world. And that's amazing. It's amazing that people took the risk and broke through into something new, because it's hard for all of us to be able to continue to feel enthusiastic and to share. But I think one of the reasons why it's worked for Tusk, for the old police house, and for lawnmowers is because it's not one person, it's a group, it's a community, and we've all helped share the work. And yes, it's a lot on us, but we've all done it together, and it's been able to help us all move forward. So I can see some questions coming up, and I really have been talking a lot. Is it time for me to answer some questions rather than just talk whatever I decide is important?
Great. Thank you so much, Mariam.
Thank you.
Really, really, really amazing to hear all your honesty and your wisdom and your experience. Thank you so much. And you're such an eloquent speaker as well. So it's really actually lovely to hear you speak and play as well. Yeah, we're getting a lot of positive feedback on the chat. Yeah, really captivating. So thank you. I'm just going to go for it and read some questions.
Okay.
So I've got a question from Supriya. And the question is, well, first of all, she says, thank you. And then, what has been the one positive change for you and your music because of lockdown?
Saying no to things, realizing and prioritizing. Before lockdown, I might have hesitated, and I might have taken on a job or a project or considered some work for something that I maybe wasn't 100%, my whole heart wasn't in. I've said no to a couple of different things, and actually one thing came back with a repercussion, which was, but it just wasn't right for me to be involved in something, and it wouldn't have been right for my own mental health to have been involved in something, because I already had a hesitancy. My gut told me this isn't you. And then actually to have had the reaction from saying, I'm sorry, no, thank you very much. It really went to me, to prove to me that actually that wasn't right for me. And so the other side of that was to listen to my gut instinct when something was right. And it was right for me to go on my turntables and to write an album in 1 week. And that was okay. It worked, and it's been well received. So there's something about that feels right. I hope that was a good answer. It was an okay answer.
It was great. Okay, next question from Knick-Knack. Cheeky question, she says. Where/how do you see the turntablism developing in the future?
Well, Knick-Knack, it's through people like yourself. and your fantastic skills with the turntable and your enthusiasm and the sharing and the love of the turntable. That's where I see it going, and that's how I see it continuing. And, you know, again, being invited to an opportunity like this, you know, what I do is weird. I've embraced that for a long time now, but I'm here talking to you about that. And for some reason, you're all still here. Those kind of opportunities, that sharing and love will continue it. But I will also talk more in depth with you, knick-knack, at another day, because I know we're chatting about some stuff. But there will be more experiments, I'm certain, that will take it forward into the future.
Great, I can't wait. Okay, a question from Stacey. Do you find yourself naturally incorporating classical techniques and pieces into your work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say that it's one of the things that defines my character as a turntablist. And I think it's one of the, how do I put it? It's an important criteria for the turntable, that it is for it to be recognized as an instrument, for it to be treated like any other instrument, and for us to consider the turntable as we would when we write with any other instrument. And then how do I adapt? So if I wanted to write something for cello, something for clarinet, something for voice, something for turntable, I could still have the same melody, but the way in which it would be played is different for every instrument. When I consider that, and I consider how to adapt something for different instruments, I then believe that I recognize and respect the turntable as an instrument in that particular way. I certainly do also borrow ideas as other composers do. Piece, for example, that I wrote for Huddersfield in 2019 was for 4 turntables. And I borrowed ideas from Steve Reich of phasing and made a 4 turntable beat juggle for one person, funny enough, which was me. But as soon as I got into the phase and things started, the bits of beatings, then I started playing with it and messing it up. But I borrowed that idea, that concept of getting these beatings, and then paired it as 2 duets and etc. So yes, little ideas and things like that. But then I completely, you know, I put my hands like that.
You mentioned as well that you were looking into string quartets as well.
Oh, yeah.
I just wonder how that parallels to for turntables. How would you?
Well, one of the things that's unique about the turntable is that it is very tactile, and certainly the way I use it is very tactile. I'm hands-on decks, but it, like any other instrument, it has a limitation. It depends on what you want the turntable to do, but it also has this unique facet which comes with an electronic instrument, which is that you are able to apply a sound to it. One of the things that makes it unique, going back to the tactile nature of the turntable, is that you are able to compose using just a technique and change the sound material. You are also able to compose your own material for the record. Excuse me, there are 2 different sides of the composition, but we do find this meeting point. It's kind of like gooey caramel in a chocolate, where it's only the right combination of techniques and the right sound that you get this particular sound that you want. I think as a composer and as a creative in music, we're always looking for the specific sound. So it's not just about something technical. It's not just about just writing for a particular ensemble. It's about the overall effect and sound. So just like there are extended techniques and particular timbres and sounds that come out from a string quartet, there are ways that we can work and imitate and borrow ideas for a turntable quartet. So one thing that I'm sure many people are aware of, composers such as Alvin Lucier and Eliane Radigue, when they work with acoustic instruments and electronic instruments, and you have tones, pitches that are very similar, or ever so slightly detuned, you get a beating of the waves, you get that empty space when the waves clash together. You can do that with 4 turntables, but you can perform with them. That's something that I've borrowed and leaned on a great deal. And I've seen that in instrumental writing and borrowed those kind of things and tried, and lots of errors and etc. So that was a big question, that one. You might regret that.
No, that was really interesting. And it's actually made me think, when you're talking about composing and thinking about specific sounds, I wonder how has Twitch and online performance changed the way that audiences perceive this music, I guess, because for sometimes it might be slightly delayed or distorted, or people are listening in different headphones. And is that something that you've embraced, or how have you kind of dealt with what the artist is hoping to portray?
I am able to control within certain parameters the output, the sound that I'm sending out. So tonight, I used a second computer because it's just easier logistically for me to have, and also for the computer power, to have a second laptop that's working. So I use a piece of software called Tractor. I'm running Tractor through a sound card, which happens to be my DJ mixer, which is sitting behind me. I then take that output and I put it through Ableton. Ableton is then sent to a virtual sound card. That virtual sound card is my sound card for Zoom. So that's how I had that set up there. I'm able to choose and set EQ settings, etc. in Ableton, or I'm able to use things that I've chosen and set with my own sounds and samples, but I have a full sound. I also do work with sounds where I've specifically composed for something to be in very clear stereo left and right, and know that it's going to come out as that, and send it through Ableton as that. So there are certain things like that that I do consider and I want for a specific reason. The other thing about like sort of the attitude we have at Police House when we've streamed things is, well, I've given it my best shot, but we're the DIY, and if things go a bit, they go, I give it a go. I'd much rather go to bed saying I tried than not. So we do also embrace that, you know, these things happen. We are improvisers, and, you know, anything can happen in the room when you improvise, as I know many people will know. So there's a little bit of that there too. The biggest positive has most definitely been reaching a wider audience, reaching other people who wouldn't normally see something, who go, "Ooh," or they might go, But if there's a reaction, it means I've done something right. So there's definitely been positives to things like Twitch, definitely.
Yeah, great. I love that. And I can also imagine that improvising on something such as Zoom, you know, you get all these other external influences that just add to the interesting music. So yeah, I can imagine that that's pretty cool. Okay, another question. Are there any platforms you would suggest for artists to show their work?
I mean, I'm an advocate of Twitch, as I know you'll have heard me say a few times tonight. The reason it works for us is because we're not playing copyrighted music. We're playing experimental weirdo sounds that an algorithm's not going to pick up and ban. I'm not going to be doing some crazy pop music DJ set, which I'm very certain will be locked down now, because Twitch is now owned by Amazon, and they are being very careful about streaming copyrighted music. I'm not trying to in any way get people to break the law. It's just that it can't stop uncopyrighted music that doesn't exist, if that makes sense. And so for me, Twitch has been very important. I think it's worth explaining that our first TV show for Police House had something like 20 people watch, and then our last ones had a few hundred, and it took us 13 weeks to keep building and building and building and building audience. And we didn't ever spend a penny on any of the, you know, no advertising on social media or anything like that. But we have an Instagram, we have a Twitter, we have a Facebook. For us, we found that Facebook's the main one that works. We share snippets of videos. I've always done 1 minute at the old Police House, so people, an audience go, oh, actually, yeah, I will give that a go. But we also have actively sought out, we actively look for things and actively want to get involved or ask people, I like what you do, would you like to come and play? So yes, there are platforms that I think can help facilitate, but I think the curiosity and you going out and just give something a chance will really help. If you find an artist you like, go on YouTube, Google them, check their Bandcamp, see what other people listen to, see what their playlists are and stuff like that. I hope that helps.
Thanks. Okay, I've got a question/comment from Ryoko. I saw you first performing with Usurper, Edinburgh. Then you came to Huddersfield to do solo. Very strong/dynamic performance and with a lot of sense of humour. Is that energy something you are deliberately conscious about or just something that naturally comes out as a result? Sorry, is this a question?
Ryoko, I'm just cheeky, mate. It's very natural. It's very, very natural. There's just nothing I can do about it. I'm just cheeky. I mean, I'm a bit of a firecracker. I've always had to be quite a resilient person when it comes to performing. I just don't know how it's going to go down. So if I kind of have a laugh, I don't think anyone else is gonna. If you've seen me laugh and have a joke when I'm performing, it's genuine. It's because I am having a good time. And of course, if I'm with Usurper, I'm definitely having a good time because I know those lads very well, Ali and Malky. We always have a very good time. So yeah,
I know you did.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Bye.
Yeah, it's so nice when someone's energy can project through a screen as well. You're definitely feeling that from you. Okay, another question about, I guess maybe other people can chip in if they have experiences, but using Jamulus. I'm not sure. I've kind of had a go at using it myself. So it's like a online platform that you have to like log into servers for those of you that don't know. And you can join a server and you can connect with musicians internationally and kind of join an improvisation or jam session because you can use your internet, like you can plug into the internet, so it's much faster than Zoom. Do you have any experience of using that? Or
I don't know. I wanted to go along to a workshop that was Otomo Yoshihide, the turntablist. He was hosting in Japan because he hosts a festival and he was running it on Jamulus. So I'm aware of it, but I haven't actually used it yet. I'm going to have to give it a go, though. It sounds right up my street. Thanks for the recommendation.
Yeah, it's quite fun because you can just join into random sessions, so you can just meet other musicians and play together. So I think it's definitely got its positives. Great. So another question from Gretz. Did lockdown help you find your daily creative routine, or have you found peace in the lack of it?
No peace at all. No. I was saying before, I'm very much a performer, and there's an adrenaline junkie. I'm about gigging and going out, and it was really hard not being somewhere else a few days a week. It was very hard at first to get used to that. So I had to create a routine, and I still have back to that. I'll be very honest with you about that, and I don't know if other people have felt that or experienced that, but my life certainly ahead of lockdown was absolutely nuts, just all over the place. A gig over here, my partner's in Scotland, I'm living in Newcastle, but I've got something down London, and moving around all the time. I've always embraced that and had it for years. So I've had to I've had to make a routine, and I've also had to be very mindful and very conscious and say no. And I've had to find those times where I just go, no more social media, no more of that today. And one of the new things that I do now, which I've never really done before, is just find time for reading. Now, I know that sounds really ignorant. It's not. I'm a listener. So I listen to a lot of music. I wake up and immediately put the music on. But now I find my reading time as well. So I find that time to not be reading something for work, but for just me, what I want to be reading now. So I found those little sort of bits of positivity in my everyday life that help mark where the day is, so the hours do have a shape, and so that there is a routine, and there's something to look forward to as well. I hope that answered that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've also answered Nick Nack's question in a way of, she says, if it's okay to ask, how have you managed your mental health and creativity during all these lockdowns? And I guess I could tag on the end there of, how have you managed to remain positive and insightful about the future and the work that you're doing? How have you managed to keep perspective?
So mental health, it's a big issue, and it's a very important one. I have spoken very openly and honestly and with my friends and family about mental health and saying we need to be talking about it. It's not been perfect, and I am happy to talk to you about it. I do have to do things, and I do have to mark time. I have particular people that I go to. One of which is my partner, one of which is a family member, and I have a check-in, and it doesn't have to be something huge. It's just a text, but it's a something. And then there are days where it needs to be more, and there's days where they needed to be more, and then there's days where it's totally legit and it's fine, and this also does relate to the routine thing and making a shape, giving the day a shape and those hours a shape. Keeping creative during the lockdown. One of the things that I found very, very useful, and I've shared with a number of different friends, is giving yourself permission. Work as a creative can be learning, and it is work. It's our job as creatives to be informed, and you can count it as work. So if you need to sit on your bum and you need to listen to 4 hours of new music you've never heard, and you just need to enjoy everything by Fly Notice, or you need to go and listen to the same Cassandra Miller track 18 times in a row, then you need to do that, and you're going to come out of that better. And if you allow yourself and give yourself permission and not punish yourself because you haven't cracked out a symphony today, you will feel better for it. You are learning and you are informing yourself by learning and by embracing art around you. But you need to give yourself that permission to do that. And it is important for us as artists to do that. It's also important for us, I think, to say, this isn't the time for me to write now. I need a break. And I have had to say that, and I've done that. There was a question earlier about work from Supriya. And being able to say no has been really big for me, especially as a busy person, because I find it hard to say no because I like to be a busybody and doing loads of stuff. It's had consequences, and I've gone, well, you definitely weren't the right person to be working with then, were you, mate? You want to be like that? You think I want to put up with that? No, it's all right. You can keep your job. And I don't know what else to say, but be honest and just go, do you know, I'm old enough now to go, that's what happens. I suppose the other thing with mental health is, I think I think it's important that we also consider others. There are times where I kind of just wish someone had thought of me, and I just thought, you know, you think of someone. Is there someone for you that you think, do you know what, I'm going to drop them a text. I'll just send them an email. There's something for us as well where we make an opportunity to then start new connections or sort of revisit things. And it can, for me, that's been a really positive thing with my mental health, having the gorgeous catch-ups. Oh my God, you did that. Oh, look at that. Oh, the dog's so much bigger now. Like even the little things, but it's and it's given me something to look forward to. So I hope that's kind of helped a little bit there.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's really insightful and important to talk about these things. So yeah, really appreciate your honesty and, you know, all your experience coming through. And Nick Mack says, fully appreciate your honesty and vulnerability. Thank you. Yeah, we've got, well, if anyone else has another question, please feel free. But Stacey's just asked, is there a way to contact you? What's the best way to kind of keep up to date with what you're up to? Do you have an email or kind of some kind of chain thing?
Yeah, so the best email address for me is oldpolicehousegateshead@gmail.com. My website is mariam-rezaei.com, and that email address is on there. You can see things, I keep updating it every now and then. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I update them all with the same thing. So if you're on one of them, you'll see the same thing, if that makes sense. But yeah, you'll see things there. But it would be great to hear from anyone here tonight, and to have conversations and chat, and to learn more about you, because I've just talked for the whole time.
And we've really enjoyed it. And I guess lastly, is there anything else coming out from the Old Police House? Like, is there what's next, or are you taking a break, or?
I've just come back now from having had a break, so we're looking at funding, and we're starting to plan how do we go forward for Tusk Fringe in October, and looking at what the shape of that might be. I personally am working on a couple of different projects. I'm writing a book, which is incredible, because if someone said, what's your weakness? I'd say writing. So it really is quite funny that I'm writing a book. And that's about turntablism, funnily enough. But certainly looking at the last 10, 15 years of turntablism and the hip hop and experimental side. So there's a little bit of time to reflect and to look back on things, rather than having to pump out lots of new stuff all the time. And so I suppose lockdowns presented new opportunities that a year ago I couldn't have imagined. So that's where I am now.
Brilliant. Wow. I mean, good luck with the writing. Can't wait.
Thanks, I'm going to need it.
That's brilliant. Okay, well, if anyone has any final burning questions, please pop them in the chat, or forever hold your silence. And I'm just going to wrap up and say thank you so much to everyone. It's been so amazing to feel part of this community and hear your experiences. And I feel like the ethos that you have at the Old Police House, and everything you're saying about the wider community internationally, and welcoming people from overseas to be here and connecting with others, checking in with others, I think we can all relate, and I think it's so important. We've got lots of thanks streaming in now on the chat, so make sure you read them after. And for everyone else, thank you so much. Keep your eyes out, ears out for the next seminar that's going to be happening in March, and we'll be sending around an email with all the information in. So I think that's it from me, and thanks again, Mariam.
Thank you.
If anyone else wants to say anything, Yorkshire Sound Woman. Great. Well, hopefully we'll see everyone at the next seminar next month, and have a great evening, weekend, wherever you are.
Bye everyone. Thank you. Bye.